Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to another FIFA 22 video where today we're going to be checking out the 4-3-3-4 formation. Now this is definitely one of my favorite formations in the game this year. This is a formation that I always look towards if I want to just play something a little bit more attacking, a little bit more aggressive. I haven't had a lot of experience with this formation recently, except for when I've been playing a bit of draft, because the players that I've got, as you can see, having Cantona as a left winger and Pele as a right winger is not ideal, but this is a formation that I do want to try out. I'm going to be changing up my team very, very soon, and I definitely want to be getting some wingers in and just trying out this formation a little bit better with some better personnel, because even with the personnel that I was playing with, this formation was still lights out good. It was really good fun, and it was just like, that's the key word, it was fun. If you want to have a fun formation, if you want to just play something fun and aggressive and attacking, this is definitely the formation for you. Now, as you can see with the tactics, the way we've got it set up, it is quite attacking and quite aggressive. So let's break it down. We're starting off with press after possession loss. Now, this is something that works exceptionally well, especially in 4-3-3 formations. These formations are probably the best in the game at pressing. And that's why I would always recommend, if you're playing a press, to play with width in your team, because it just makes it a lot more difficult for your opponents to play out from a press. But naturally, you're going to need to have players that have got good stamina, especially if you're going to play this from minute 1, because your players, by probably about minute 65, 70, they're going to be very, very tired, and it's going to lead to you potentially getting countered. So if you are going to play this one from minute 1, that is something to bear in mind. I would also recommend having another formation that maybe once you get 2 goals in front, that you can come out of this formation, because then that will also allow you to protect your lead. If you're 3-1 up in a game, you don't need to keep pressing someone. You can go into a formation that maybe, or just press pause and just take the press off and just go to balance all of a sudden. So making sure that you obviously manage the game is super, super important as well. In terms of the width, stuck to around about 50, seemed to work very, very well. I very rarely change this in any formations. I don't really see the point of changing it. In terms of depth, we're on 65, because if you're going to play on a press, you do need to play higher up the pitch. You do need to, there's no point playing a press if you're going to have like 50 depth, because your players are going to be pressing from too deep. So obviously the higher up that you are, the more effective a press is going to be. And 65 was the sweet spot for this formation. Any more than that, and I think it becomes just a bit too insane, and you're just kind of asking to be countered. It does leave a lot of open space if you go too high, especially in behind, for people to just lob through balls over the top. So 65 was the right number. This is also something that if you do end up pausing and just turning the press off, you want to change this maybe down to 55 or something. If you've got a 2-goal lead, I'd definitely recommend doing that. In terms of the build-up play, I went for long ball. It works really well in 4-3-3 formations, playing long ball. You could also use fast build-up in this formation, because you have the cam to link between the midfield and the attack, so fast build-up can work. I personally just preferred long ball. I think it works a little bit more effective, I think, because the wingers tend to make really good runs, especially with the way we've got set up, and I just think the long ball tends to work a little bit more effective. The fast build-up works a little bit better in sort of compact formations, which this one necessarily isn't, so the long ball is a bit more effective. In terms of chance creation, this one's an interesting one, because they all kind of work, but for various different reasons. I ended up sticking to balance, and just kind of letting the long ball dictate what my players did. Possession can work very, very well if you're not too bothered about having too many, penetrating runs. You want to just control the game. Forward runs, obviously, if you want to go super aggressive, but I would never recommend that. Direct passing is a really good one for this formation. The downside is it can leave you getting counterattacked quite a lot, especially the depth being quite high, the instructions and the press. So I just think that with the direct passing, it made it a bit too insane. So I found that balance worked well, just letting the players run and make those long ball runs in behind, but also letting the instructions kind of dictate how we played was the way to go in this formation. Offensive width, I went for 70, really important, because you got wingers. You don't want to go too narrow, otherwise the press becomes ineffective. If you go to like 50, it means that your wingers are going to be a bit more involved in terms of potentially scoring goals and chances. But then playing on a press is pointless, because they're going to be too narrow all the time, and it just defeats the purpose of playing the press. So you do need to play wide enough that your wingers can press on top of the fullbacks. Players in the box, we've got on 6. That's kind of up to you. Corners and free kicks, this is kind of all subject to what you personally like. In terms of the instructions, obviously the goalkeeper is going to be on comes to crosses and sweeper keeper, and the whole defence in this instance is going to be on stay back while attacking, because the rest of the formation is quite attacking and aggressive. So in this formation, we need to keep that back for all of them back, keep making sure we've got that solid foundation and that we don't have any players getting out of position. In terms of the two midfielders, we've got Vieira and Guardiola. These two are not ideal in terms of personnel. You need to have box-to-box midfielders for this because they're going to be playing the way I've got them set up and the way that I wanted them to be is I wanted them to be centre midfielders, which means they're going to be box-to-box mids. So that's really what you need in this formation. Cams can work it well in this formation if you've got some attacking midfielders. Maybe you don't want 3 attacking midfielders because that would be a bit too over the top. But certainly, I think you really need for those 2 box-to-box mids. Works very, very well. Someone like that, Bellingham, works really, really well in that position because he's just on balance for everything. You've just changed him to cover centre. They get forwards, they need to score. They get back, they need to defend. So therefore, they need to do both sides of the game. Speaking of Bellingham in the cam spot, he's on get into the box and free roam. Pretty much the standard stuff that we always use for our cams. We always use get into the box and free roam, which is the best way to play. And in terms of Lewandowski, he's also on stay central and get in behind. Obviously, you're going to have, you know, if you're going to be playing long ball, you generally need fast strikers. So Lewandowski wasn't ideal for this position. I tended to take Vieira off, put Bellingham back in centre midfielder, Lewandowski back to cam, and I put Pele through the middle, and then I put 2 proper wingers out wide, and that seemed to work a lot better when I did that. But generally, you need 3 very quick players up front if you're going to be playing long ball. Obviously, you're going to be playing lots of balls in behind. Obviously, that is a strength, but Lewandowski banged in the goals when it did come because generally most of your goals get scored by the cam and the striker. So your 2 best finishers in your team need to be in these 2 positions. The rest of the positions are kind of more just to support those 2, but I would probably say that 90% of my goals came from the striker and the cam and not really too many from the wingers or the midfielders. But speaking of the wingers, we did have these guys, of course, on get into the box for crosses and get in behind, but I actually had them on free roam, the wingers, and this was really, really effective. And this is the reason why I want to come back to this formation when I've got maybe a little bit set up better with certain personnel. But the free roam was very interesting. It was very enjoyable to see that sometimes the wingers played out wide, which is really, really important. But it was mainly when I was trying to attack. They just found that they free roam like Bellingham, and having those 3 kind of move around a lot made it a lot more interesting and was something that I want to get back to in terms of trying this formation out with better personnel, because having the right personnel was very, very important because sometimes players like Cantona were a bit too slow, but if I had the right players, they drifted really, really well and got in some very dangerous positions to be able to really tear apart a lot of people's defenses. So it's really, really important to have the right personnel. Another thing that I didn't mention before, if you want to make the press a little bit more effective, is you can have the front 3 in terms of Pele, Lewandowski, and Cantona, the left wing, right wing, and striker. You can have them all on stay forward because that's going to make the press even more effective, because rather than them dropping back into a defensive shape, especially if you lose possession in the final third of your opponent's half, they're going to be in a much better position to press higher up, rather than if they drop back into a defensive shape and then have to come up the pitch again. It's also going to conserve their stamina a bit more because they're not having to do the running back into the defensive shape. They're going to be staying up. So it's going to obviously keep their stamina back a little bit. So if you do want to do that, you can. I personally don't like to do that. It just doesn't suit the way I personally like to play. I like to control the game a lot more. So that doesn't really work for me, but you can do that if you so choose. But that is it for today's formation, guys. I love this formation. I think this is absolutely brilliant. I think it is just genuinely a really, really good formation, and definitely one I want to come back to once I've changed my team up a little bit. So you will be seeing me use this formation a lot more going forward. So do drop a thumbs up if you do enjoy this formation, and let me know down in the comment section if you have any trouble with it. Make sure you subscribe as well if you are new to the channel. But that's all for today, guys. Have an awesome day. I'm out.